Tonight, the hunt for a gang of thugs after a brutal attack in Melbourne's southeast. A woman left injured after a shocking hit run at Abbotsford. Details live. Jumping castle businesses targeted in a string of arson attacks to wipe out rivals. Travellers left waiting as flight disruptions soar. A miracle in Miami as passengers scramble to escape before a jet explodes. And a troubled star dumped as an American Pie finally gets to call Australia home.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. Police are hunting for a vicious gang tonight after a savage machete attack on a suburban shopping strip in Melbourne's southeast. The 23-year-old victim was stabbed repeatedly, then kicked before he managed to stagger into a restaurant for help.
The victim cowers as three hooded attackers swing machetes. It's too brutal to show in full, but in the 10-second video, he's slashed and stabbed 6 times. Twice, they stomp on his head and punch him too. The 23-year-old was attacked on Buckingham Avenue in Springvale around 9:30 Thursday night.
He asked us to help, and he was asking us to protect him, and he was asking to hide.
The victim was with friends. They all ran to a nearby restaurant where Dae Hon was working.
He needed a cloth to, stop his blood, and we also gave him some water to get him to stay awake, I guess.
He was taken to hospital with wounds to his back and legs.
He was vomiting, and he was vomiting blood at the same time.
There's been a conflict amongst several youths in recent times. Elaborating into that is forming part of the investigation.
Straight after the attack, the victim said he didn't know who stabbed him.
He said there was random people stabbing him for a random reason.
We believe that we know who they are, and my suggestion to them would be that they come and identify themselves to us in the first instance before we come and knock on their door.
And Paul Dowsley joins us now with the latest on the investigation. Paul, detectives are confident they're closing in.
Arrests soon, they say, Mitch. Detectives believe the suspects are in their late teens, but they don't think this attack was gang-related. Some good news for the victim. He is thankfully out of hospital, back at home, Mitch, recovering, I would say more, from this attack with his mum and dad.
Paul Dowsley in Springvale, thank you. There has been another disturbing hit run in Melbourne with a driver fleeing, leaving a woman injured. Cassie Zervos is following developments, and Cassie, she was left on a busy road in Abbotsford.
Well, Mitch, she has head injuries and a fractured pelvis after she was struck here on busy Johnston Street. This security vision shows the moment before the pedestrian was hit as she crossed busy Johnston Street last night. The impact is too confronting to show, but instead of stopping, the driver of the blue sedan fled the scene. Police have told 7 News today there's no way that driver would not have known that they struck a pedestrian.
CCTV footage has established that there were people in the area, which we believe may be able to assist us with our investigation.
This is the latest in a series of hit runs which the Chief Commissioner has described as dog acts. In the past month, there has been at least 5. 2 of those have been fatal, including a baby boy. Tonight, the victim of the Abbotsford hit run remains in hospital. Mitch.
Cassie Zervos at Abbotsford, thank you. A jealous jumping castle operator has admitted to masterminding a string of arson attacks in a campaign to wipe out his rivals. James Balcombe orchestrated 10 attacks in a bid to become Melbourne's #1 party hire company.
A jumping castle warehouse under attack from arsonists. The $1 million blaze instigated by a jealous rival.
It was all ashes. It was just a mess. I thought it was the end of the world.
Michael Andrew lost his business of 20 years when fellow party supplier James Balcombe ordered a mate to burn it down. Balcombe has pleaded guilty to orchestrating 10 attacks on competitors during the summer of 2017. A court told he became obsessed with being the best. He became obsessed with outdoing his rivals.
It was crazy. And then another guy in Werribee was attacked, and then bang, it was us, yeah. And just devastating.
The court heard Balcombe went to extreme lengths to cover his tracks. When word started spreading about the arson attacks, he organised for his own property to be set on fire, so he'd look like a victim too. Balcombe's bizarre behaviour didn't end there. In 2019, he skipped bail and disappeared. Police caught up with him in Perth, where he'd been living under a fake name and in disguise. Balcombe's main accomplice has already been jailed for 8.5 years, but he could receive an even longer prison term when he's sentenced at a later date.
It was devastating, but you've got to move on in life, you know.
Estelle Greeping, 7 News.
V-Line passengers have been left stranded by a network-wide shutdown. Emma O'Sullivan has the details from Southern Cross Station. And Emma, there were major delays through the morning peak.
Mitch, all trains stopped around 6 o'clock this morning because of the communications fault. It meant that train drivers couldn't reach controllers, so there was no choice but to shut down an entire regional network. It's not the first time this kind of outage has happened, and for some, patience is wearing thin.
This is the third time in 5 weeks that we have had a complete network outage.
I apologise for any inconvenience to any passenger. But these matters are taken very seriously, because if they're not, you can finish up with very serious incidents.
Services slowly started to return from 6:30, and V-Line says VicTrack crews had fixed the problem by 9:30. Mitch?
Emma O'Sullivan at Southern Cross Station, thank you. Tears have been shed in State Parliament during a powerful step towards reconciliation. In an Australian first, Victoria is set to establish an independent authority to oversee treaty negotiations.
On the steps of Parliament and inside the lower house.
This is an historic day for our state.
Today wasn't about politicians talking, it was about listening.
There's no escaping the harsh reality that Aboriginal people have suffered immensely at the hands of the Victorian state. We were driven from our lands, murdered, herded onto reserves.
Co-chairs of the First Peoples Assembly urged almost 100 MPs to support an independent authority to oversee Victoria's treaty negotiations, the first in the country.
This model will ensure treaty negotiations are not restrained by colonial systems or government bureaucracy. Instead, these negotiations will uphold our culture, our law, LORE, and Western law.
The authority will sit outside the state's bureaucracy and won't report to a minister.
And I understand that that is different, but it needs to be. Treaty needs to be done on our terms.
For far too long we've had whitefellas telling First Nations Victorians how it ought to be, and I don't intend to do that.
The laws have support from the state government, coalition and Greens as they applauded. One outgoing Liberal MP stood still.
I find the statement always was, always will be Aboriginal land personally offensive. This land belongs to all Australians.
The bill will be voted on tomorrow.
Don't look back on this moment in years to come and see yourself on the wrong side of history. Instead, walk with us.
Chanel Bella, 7 News.
Victoria has more debt than any other state, according to new economic data. Chanel Vella is live with the details, and Chanel, debt has hit record levels.
Mitch, Victoria already has almost $102 billion of debt, and that number is set to rise to $167 billion in 4 years, when this is compared to the New South Wales budget released yesterday. In 4 years' time, theirs will sit well under ours at $114 billion. And of course, governments must also contend with rising interest rates.
We were anticipating that the rates would rise consistently over the next 1.5 to 2 years.
Our debt, Victoria's debt, projected debt, is much greater than the debt of New South Wales, Queensland combined.
It comes as our big projects risk adding to the debt load, with a new Auditor General's report revealing the Metro Tunnel project has already chewed up 98% of contingency money put aside for overruns, and it still has 3 years before it's complete. Mitch.
Chanel Vella in the newsroom, thank you. Australian travellers are paying the price as our airlines battle to recover from lockdowns. New figures have revealed the increasing number of flight disruptions, and we're being warned there's more to come.
The fun of flying has nosedived. Delays, cancellations and cost eating away at trips. Just 64% of domestic flights last month arrived on time, way down on the long-term average of 82%.
Yeah, definitely a little bit. It's been a bit slower.
Jetstar has the most delays, Rex among the most on time. Weather and COVID blamed for problems. New figures from the Federal Transport Department show Qantas cancelled 7.5% of its flights in May. That's the most of all domestic airlines, averaging 5.5%, which itself is more than double the long-term cancellation average of 2%. The most affected route between Melbourne and Sydney.
This is probably going to be the case for us for at least the short to medium term.
Some airlines now cancel flights to consolidate them, to take pressure off ground staff and burn less fuel. That adds pressure to airfares.
We're taking capacity down in the months of July, August, in order to get airfares up to cover fuel costs, and it's looking like it's sustainable.
US airlines have cancelled 3,500 flights in less than a week. Long waits for baggage and security at European airports. Australia's on-time performance in May, marginally better than April, the worst on record.
When we're asking workers to come back to aviation, they simply don't want the work. The work is insecure. It's low paid.
This man found his own lost bag, tracing it to Melbourne Airport with his Apple AirTag.
It's here somewhere.
He claims Singapore Airlines were meant to call him, but after a week of waiting, he solved it himself.
Anyway, I've got it back.
Qantas expects the school holidays to run smoother than Easter because people are spacing out their travel. Blake Johnson, 7 News.
Australia's power crisis is easing, at least for now, with the market operator starting to wind back emergency measures. But the outlook isn't so good when it comes to prices.
The Minister and the market operator.
Well, thanks for everything.
Congratulating each other for keeping the lights on.
We have been able to avoid blackouts and load shedding over recent weeks, despite very considerable challenges.
And will gradually lift the emergency suspension of the East Coast energy market from tomorrow, having forced sufficient supply into the system.
Because of that intervention, we've been able to operate the system through a tight and challenging couple of days.
More challenges ahead, though, with smaller electricity retailers who didn't lock in cheaper long-term supply contracts before the price hikes, urging their customers to leave or face bills doubling or more. Electricity in a Box, the latest, saying only the lazy or crazy would stay.
Just to be clear, if you don't switch and you receive one of these big price hikes, your bill could double or even more than triple.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the sooner his government can bring more renewables into the system, the sooner those electricity prices will go down.
The future is renewables. The market has spoken.
Institutional investors speaking loudly.
The total amount of investment that we anticipate is around 70 billion.
That to build 66 gigawatts of wind, solar and battery storage over the next decade as coal and gas phase down and out. A massive challenge.
Many times over the size of Snowy 2.0.
About 30 times over its size. Mark Riley, 7 News.
There's breaking news from Afghanistan this evening, where a major earthquake has killed hundreds of people south of the capital, Kabul. The true toll from the 6.1 magnitude quake is still unclear. Early reports say as many as 280 people have been killed and more than 600 injured. More than 100 passengers and crew have scrambled to safety in a death-defying evacuation after an airline jet crashed and burst into flames in the US. Investigators say the landing gear collapsed, sparking the fire.
Seconds from a fiery emergency, Red Air Flight 203's Miami approach looked routine, even peaceful. An aviation watcher posted this video and noted the landing gear was down. And yet the flight's return to Earth goes horribly wrong. An apparent nose wheel collapse sends the McDonnell Douglas MD-82 veering left off Miami International's runway, crashing through a communications tower and a small building, bursting into flames.
When our fire crews arrived, they saw the wing of the aircraft was on fire.
126 passengers and crew had made the 2-hour flight from Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, all forced into a surreal slide down emergency chutes to the tarmac, and a view of their jet ablaze as fire crews smothered it in foam.
They also did a primary search to ensure that all passengers were off the aircraft.
No one died in the crash. Officials say injuries were minor.
We do have 3 patients that were transported to local area hospitals.
Red Air is a Dominican airline. America's National Transportation Safety Board has confirmed a team is on its way to Miami to investigate the crash. In the United States, Tim Lester, 7 News.
Back home, pioneering American footy star Mason Cox can now officially call Australia home. The giant AFL ruckman stood tall at a citizenship ceremony at the MCG.
Mason Troy Cox.
Bye-bye American Pie. New Aussie Mason Cox presented with his citizenship certificate by fanatical magpie, the Lord Mayor.
Oh, it's kind of I guess like a government acknowledges that you've been here and you're part of the culture now and you're part of the people.
Cox grew up in Dallas playing soccer and basketball. Spotted by an AFL scout, recruited as a project player.
Cox again. Oh, it's getting better.
He admits then he knew little about Australia.
There was a bunch of kangaroos jumping around. There was a Sydney Harbour Bridge. I'd never heard of Melbourne, didn't know anything about it.
We just never know what to predict with him. We thought he was going to be an engineer in Texas. And, a week later he's off to Australia.
Mason was one of 110 people to receive their Australian citizenship at a special ceremony organised by the Collingwood Football Club. And all of the new Aussies also received a magpie scarf. A citizen for just minutes and already head and shoulders above others during the national anthem.
I think I want to spend the rest of my life here, so this is one of the major parts of being able to do that.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
Welcome along, Mason. Tim Watson is next with sport, and Tim, the Magpies have made a call on Jordan De Goey.
Mitch, he was away from the club again today. Mitch Cleary is at Pies headquarters, and Mitch Collingwood has already made the call.
Well, Tim, it's all but ruled out Jordan De Goey to miss Sunday's game against GWS, having sat out 3 straight days of training. It was hoped he'd be here at the club today to record a video apology, but that never eventuated. Top spot goes on the line tomorrow. Stephen May is back for Melbourne. Sam Wiedemann and Toby Bedford recalled. Max Gawn to miss with that ankle. There's no Jake Melksham, while Mitch Brown has been dropped. Meantime, Brisbane captain Dane Zorko is out with his hamstring. Zach Bailey sidelined with COVID. It should be a cracker at the MCG. Tim?
It should be. Thanks, Mitch. We'll speak to you again shortly. Also, how the Blues plan to solve their backline crisis.
Yeah, might have to go down to centre back.
Luke Beveridge to make a coach's call on his live wire forward, and Mitch Serena Williams has made her long-awaited comeback ahead of Wimbledon. I'll see you again soon.
OK, Tim, looking forward to that. Thank you. A high-profile swimming coach has been arrested. Up next, he's accused of preying on big-name swimmers, and we'll have the details. Also coming up, a mother's desperate plea for help to find her missing 13-year-old daughter. The new treatment for thousands of Victorian heart patients. And later, a fresh insight into what's stopping us from getting a good night's sleep. A Norlane mother is pleading for help to find her missing 13-year-old daughter. Lila disappeared on her way to Southern Cross Station last Friday, but may have continued on to Pakenham or Druin.
I call my mother-in-law over today because I'm so divided. Like, I can't even give them attention. I'm on my... Lila's not in trouble. we really just want her home, and we want to get her help, and we just miss her and love her, and yeah, we just need to know that she's safe.
Lila's family is concerned because she has autism and requires medication. One of Australia's most successful swimming coaches is facing bombshell accusations tonight. Dick Kane, the man who trained Olympic and world champions, stands accused of sexually abusing teenage girls in the 1970s.
How the world perceived Dick Kane yesterday versus today. A dying old man escorted from his home by police, threatening a legacy that took a lifetime to build.
We'll allege that these offences occurred in a number of locations in and around the southern Sydney area in the mid-1970s.
9 charges, including 6 of carnal knowledge. That's what the charge was called half a century ago. The alleged victims are former pupils at Cars Park Olympic Pool, aged 15 and 16 at the time. A magistrate said he would have refused bail, that it was a strong case if not for evidence given by Kane's wife, Jenny. Kane has throat cancer, lung cancer, seizures, heart problems and depression, and roughly 6 months to live. Dick Kane has perhaps coached more Australian sporting champions than any other. 1980 Olympics gold medalist Michelle Ford, Karen Phillips, Janelle Elford, Susie Moroney. None of these champions is among the alleged victims. Kane also coached world champion triathlete Greg Welsh, boxer Anthony Mundine and Jeff Fennick. Police want it publicised in case there are more alleged victims. In the words of one local who preferred not to speak on camera, if it's true, it's a tragedy for the victims. If not true, it's a tragedy for Dick Kane. Robert Ovadia, 7 News.
Australia's COVID death rate is the 5th highest in the world after 324 COVID patients died last week. Authorities are launching a new vaccination campaign to encourage more people to get their booster and flu shots.
You are not fully protected against the Omicron variant unless you have at least a 3rd dose of the vaccine.
2 oral antiviral COVID treatments are available from pharmacies. Authorities say just 50,000 of the 1.3 million doses available have been used. More Victorians will soon be able to access life-saving treatment for heart disease. The majority of patients are currently untreated, but that will change from July the 1st.
At 82, Robert Jones has a spring in his step after having a heart procedure he didn't know he needed.
Feeling much more buoyant, as it were, and confident and happy with my life, you know. And at 82, I can't complain.
Diagnosed with aortic stenosis, his heart valve was narrowing.
So when you exercise or do activities, you can't get enough blood.
But a transcatheter aortic valve implantation, also known as a TAVI, is saving lives. It's a minimally invasive heart valve replacement and doesn't require open heart surgery. A new heart valve implanted inside the old sick valve.
Less than an hour to perform, and often our patients are walking on the same day after the procedure.
The life-threatening condition, often mistaken for ageing, affects around 100,000 Australians, and 9 times out of 10, people don't know they have it. 10,000 people diagnosed every year.
If aortic stenosis isn't treated correctly, more than half the people diagnosed are at risk of dying within 2 years. But the medical community is moving fast. The procedure will be available on Medicare on July 1st.
I would recommend it thoroughly. I came out of it quite quickly.
Isabel Mullen, 7 News.
Jane Bunn joins us now. And Jane, it was rather grey out there today.
Mitch, we did have cloud for much of the day, but because the wind turned northwesterly, it was actually slightly warmer than in yesterday's sunshine. In the city, the coldest part of the night was at midnight, but it had risen to 11 by 8 a.m, 15 at lunchtime, and then we peaked at 15.8. This time last night, it was already just 9 degrees. Tonight won't be as cold thanks to the cloud, but it'll also because the wind will pick up. I'll show you what that'll do for us tomorrow after sport, Mitch.
See you then. Thank you very much, Jane. A speed camera backlash has sparked an investigation. Rochelle Brown has the details.
Mitch, it's what's happening on this stretch of road in Melbourne southeast that's under scrutiny. I'll have the latest live up next on 7 News.
Also ahead, Melbourne's mould menace costing homeowners thousands as winter bites. A heated exchange after a disgraced star is found guilty. And the Queen given a very special honour. A police investigation is underway into hundreds of speeding fines issued on one of Melbourne's busiest roads. Rochelle Brown is on Nepean Highway at Frankston, and Rochelle, the watchdog, has launched an inquiry.
Mitch, the speed camera saga has locals fuming, and the new Road Safety Camera Commissioner has agreed to investigate to determine if drivers were given enough warning about a speed limit change which dropped from 60 to 40 kilometres an hour along this stretch of the Nepean Highway. Drivers have long complained that the change was confusing, arguing signage was inadequate and the flashing warning speed signs were never activated.
What we're saying is these are not hoons, these are parents, these are grandparents, these are people commuting to work. And some people are getting multiple infringements in one day.
Any recommendations will be published online once the inquest is complete. Mitch?
Rochelle Brown at Frankston, thank you. The husband of a fallen Victorian policewoman has helped inspire a new law to strengthen punishment for vile conduct. Lynette's law was today welcomed by the families of other victims as it's set to be passed quickly through Parliament.
Stuart Schulz has turned 2 years of grief into a powerful new law, honouring his wife, leading Senior Constable Lynette Taylor, and 3 other officers killed in the Eastern Freeway tragedy.
All it does, it gives me a satisfaction that from our grief and our loss, we have something that is good that's come from it.
I introduced a bill to create a new offence of engaging in grossly offensive public conduct.
Dubbed Lynette's Law, engaging in grossly offensive public conduct will carry a 5-year maximum jail term. Richard Pusey was jailed for 3 months for filming the officers following the collision.
Even though that there was nothing that could have been done, his dignity still needed to be preserved.
Hopefully it makes them think twice, that there is accountability now in the end.
Any custodial sentence greater than 3 months would be a bonus for anybody.
The new bill has received bipartisan support, but lawyers say it's incredibly subjective, which will make it difficult to enforce.
The language itself is very difficult. It'll take place not so much in the filming, but in what is said about the film and what's done with it.
We now hope and expect that our courts will follow this through and not let us and our 4 loved ones down again.
A final legacy for the fallen 4. Tegan Dolling, 7 News.
A civil jury has found Bill Cosby guilty of sexually assaulting a then 16-year-old inside the Playboy mansion. Judy Huth says the disgraced actor lured her into a bedroom and assaulted her in 1975.
It's been torture. It has. Just to be ripped apart, thrown under the bus, backed over, and this to me is such a big victory.
Cosby's lawyer was heckled outside court. Ms Huth has been awarded more than $700,000 in compensation. And the UK is effectively in lockdown as Britain experiences its biggest rail strike in 30 years. The walkout has thrown the plans of commuters into disarray, costing the economy billions as workers choose to stay away from city centres. Unions are pushing for a 7% pay rise. The strike is expected to last 4 days. The Queen has been given an honour of her own with a Canterbury Cross presented by the Archbishop of Canterbury. The 96-year-old has been recognised for her 7 decades of unstinting service to the Church of England. The Silver Cross is considered a symbol of love, loyalty and affection for the Queen from the Church. Melbourne's cold and wet winter is leading to a surge in the build-up of dangerous mould in homes. The problem is even worse in the Dandenongs, where residents are still recovering from last year's destructive storms.
This is what's left of Errol Lobo's house, crushed by 5 giant eucalypts. The retiree lucky to survive.
Just like a bomb going off.
Like many, Errol is battling his insurance company. The process so sluggish that the 69-year-old is now fighting a new enemy.
The whole house is riddled with mould.
mold spores at least.
Winter rain has penetrated the shattered home. The patched ceiling has mould. It's under Errol's floor, growing under the dining table and creeping inside his beloved piano.
I feel very sad. I'm devastated as well, and it's just a lot of mental stress that just goes on and on and on and on.
It can be very dangerous, particularly for anyone that has mould as a trigger for their asthma or allergies.
Mould season is upon us. Wet, icy weather means heaters are pumping, causing indoor humidity. Perfect conditions for mould. It can be an expensive problem to fix, requiring professional eradication.
You need to look for cracked pipes in bathrooms or cracked tiles, because if you don't remove the actual source of the mould, then it's going to keep coming back.
Small infestations can be removed with vinegar. Extractor fans and dehumidifiers can help remove moisture and airborne mould spores.
The mold spores are such that they penetrate anything and everything.
Mould can cause ill health in anyone, and asthma sufferers are warned to be especially careful. Jackie Quist, 7 News.
There's a new insight into sleep troubles. Next, the pandemic hangover that's keeping us awake at night. Also a shaky day for the stock market. Gemma Acton has the details. A fresh blow for the Melbourne students caught in an airline chaos. And the musical set to hit Melbourne for 6.
Listen up, let me tell you a story that you think you've heard before.
Melbourne students set to compete in a prestigious international science competition have suffered another setback. Yesterday, we learnt their high-tech rocket was left behind by Jetstar. Now the students say US Customs have delayed its arrival. They fear it's been lost in United Airlines' luggage system and hope it can be found before the competition ends. The relief on the share market was short-lived with another tough day. Here's Network Finance Editor Gemma Acton.
Thanks, Peter. Well, after a strong start, hopes for back-to-back days of gains for Aussie shares were dashed. The ASX 200 shedding 15 points to close at 6,509. It was a poor day for the struggling buy now, pay later sector, with Zip and Hum both tumbling. The Aussie dollar has resumed its decline. It is now on the brink of slipping back under 69 US cents, while oil prices are trending lower. That's as fears grow of a US recession. And it's not just oil prices in the firing line. Since March, the iron ore price has dropped by around a fifth. That's been driven by concerns that China's economic slowdown is set to drag on. Peter.
Thanks, Emma. If you're struggling to get a good night's sleep, you're not alone, with new studies revealing many Victorians are still adjusting to life out of lockdown. The pandemic has wreaked havoc on sleep patterns, but there is expert advice to help.
For most, sweet dreams were hard to come by during the worst of the pandemic, and for a quarter of us, that's still the case.
There's always a stress worrying about elderly family members and when you get sick.
It probably interrupted it because the daily routine changed quite a bit.
In a new study from Monash University, 45% of participants reported changes to their dreams early in the pandemic.
We think it's more around the stress and uncertainty with those increasing stress hormones in the brain.
People who developed insomnia were also more likely to experience nightmares.
We saw a lot of participants dreaming about really scary things like being in survival, wars, disasters and even death.
To improve sleep, experts suggest reducing lighting at night, avoiding devices before bed, waking up at the same time and getting plenty of sunlight.
In addition, a lot of people have turned their bedrooms into work environments, and optimally we should be leaving our bedrooms and our beds just for going to sleep.
If sleep problems persist for more than 3 months after making changes to your bedtime routine, the advice is to speak with your GP about other treatment options.
One of the first things I would ask that person is about their mood and the state of anxiety.
Ashley Kanowski, 7 News.
A new hit Broadway musical is about to open in Melbourne. The Tony Award-winning Six puts a modern spin on the volatile story of Henry VIII's 6 wives.
Listen up, let me tell you a story.
It's a vibrant, fun, sassy, cheeky, pop concert style musical, and you come out on a high.
6 opens at the Comedy Festival tomorrow night and runs until August the 21st. Sport is next with Tim Watson. And Tim, not for the first time this week, there's breaking news from Collingwood.
There is, Mitch. Jordan De Goey has been granted personal leave. We'll cross live to the Magpies headquarters next as his teammates get down and dirty ahead of a giant clash. But they weren't the only ones bracing for the rough stuff. Dusty's back, but Damien Hardwick calls for calm for his Tigers star. Patrick Cripps puts on a clinic why our timely boost is just around the corner for the Blues. And Serena makes her long-awaited comeback ahead of Wimbledon. Welcome back. In breaking news, Jordan De Goey has just been granted personal leave from Collingwood, returned to Mitch Cleary at Magpies headquarters. And Mitch, his playing future has become a hot topic too.
Well, Tim, De Goey will miss this week's game against GWS, but his leave period is indefinite as of tonight. The Magpies putting no time frame on when we'll see him back at the club, having missed all of this week in light of that Bali nightclub incident. His contract talks with the Pies are on hold until season's end. Elsewhere today, the Saints doing nothing to talk down De Goey interest. So too the Bombers, who want a free agent with their spare salary cap space.
We'd have to do our homework and have a look at exactly what has happened and taking all the evidence. With all those free agents, we'll be sitting down and sort of maybe targeting one or two.
Yeah, look, we're pretty open to looking at all the players who are available, getting clear on what our needs are, and if we can add to our list throughout the free agency period, that's going to be what we're trying to do.
Richmond face Geelong Saturday. They'll be bolstered, the Tigers, by the return of triple Norm Smith medalist Dustin Martin. He's back from illness.
What we've got to realise is the level of expectation on Dustin is incredibly high. So the way he plays the game, even at 60%, is far above probably most, to be fair.
At Essendon, Darcy Parish completed about half of today's session, but does look to be over that calf injury. The big watch on how he recovers tomorrow morning. Dyson Heppel testing out his finger injury, but will be fit to fly. The Bombers ramping up their grappling training before that clash with West Coast over in Perth. Tim, it could mark the return of Nick Natanui from his long-term knee injury.
Thanks, Mitch. North Melbourne is set to turn to a highly successful footy power broker to fix its on-field struggles. Chief football reporter Tom Brown is live with the details. And Tom, you've got fresh details on the ruse.
Team North Melbourne's very publicly backed coach David Noble in recent weeks, but behind the scenes, the Kangaroos want to strengthen their football department, and Jeff Walsh shapes as their man. Most recently, Walsh helped lead Carlton's highly successful football review last year. Walsh retired as the Pies footy manager in 2020. In 36 years off-field, he's been involved in 4 flags, 10 grand finals and 25 final series. He knows a lot about winning and obviously will assist North. And Tim, the AFL's backing the centre bounce. Umpiring in the rules was a big discussion point when clubs met last week. There were some novel ideas thrown up, 2 umpires rather than 3. Jeff Kennett's proposed 25-metre penalty. Look, they're not happening at the moment, but on the centre bounce, AFL bosses told clubs they're keen to stick with tradition for the moment. For context, there is an argument that if you just throw the ball up, you open up the pool of available umpires. The AFL at this stage sticking with tradition. Tim?
Thanks, Tom. Carlton's star-studded midfield will look to ease the pressure on its battered and bruised backline, but reinforcements are on the way, with an injured All-Australian making giant strides.
With Carlton's backline decimated by injury, desperate times call for desperate measures.
Might have to go down and sit back.
The Blues captain confident Brodie Kemp can step up to fill the void in defence, along with some extra responsibility on Carlton's contested ball-winning Bulls.
It's going to be up to us, the midfield and forward group, to make sure, we put some heat on the ball, and when they do get their looks down forward, that, it's the high-pressured balls.
Jacob Wiedering, a surprise chance for an early return next week against Max King and the Saints, less than a month on from shoulder surgery.
He looks good, he's doing everything right, and then it's based on whether he gets cleared or not. So I suppose he might be a chance, but I think probably more unlikely than likely.
These new recruits won't quite be ready to be called upon just yet. Cripps, a key member of the Ball Magnet training app team, one of several AFL stars to team up with AIA's campaign to get kids more active, with the help of a Hawks champion.
Can't crumble here.
Oh, yes, buddy, use me. You know you need me. Give it to me. Oh, I'm off for a goal.
With his elbow heavily strapped, Cody Wakeman completed the Dogs' main session this morning. Coach Luke Beveridge might have to save the brave Bulldog from even himself.
You love the thought of your players just wanting to get out there at all costs and help the team, and sometimes you know they can be their own worst enemy.
Josh Bruce will remain in the VFL for at least another week. The Dogs not ruling out a return for Lockie Hunter against the Hawks on Friday night. Andrew McCormack, 7 News.
Disaster for swimmer Shayna Jack, ruled out of the World Championships after she slipped and broke her hand. In her first meet back from her drug ban, Jack had just featured in Australia's 4x100 metres mixed medley relay team, which claimed silver. The 23-year-old said on social media she's already turned her attention to the Commonwealth Games. A new international draft is set to revolutionise the Big Bash. It will allow teams to be able to recruit up to 3 overseas players. Meanwhile, David Warner fell agonisingly short of a century in the 4th ODI against Sri Lanka.
Is he gone? I think he is. How unfortunate is that for David Warner?
Glenn Maxwell's one-handed screamer couldn't save the Aussies from defeat. Sri Lanka won by 4 runs to clinch the series. Serena Williams has begun her comeback ahead of Wimbledon, partnering Ons Jabeur with a win in what was the 40-year-old's first competitive match since injuring her ankle a year ago. And the good grass court form continues for Nick Kyrgios. 16 aces, firing the Aussies through to the round of 16 at the lead-up event in Mallorca. And don't forget the front bar tonight at 9 o'clock. Crows superstar Rory Sloane is the special guest. Always a lot of fun, Mitch.
Always a lot of fun indeed, Tim, and that's rotten luck for Shayna Jack, isn't it? That's terrible.
Unbelievable after what she's been through and what she's had to battle on the way back again, but she set her sights for Commonwealth Games. So
yeah.
She'll be back in the pool soon.
We wish her well. Thank you very much, Tim. Jane is next with the forecast, and Jane, more cloud tomorrow.
Mitch, there is, but it's not all day. Now, if you're after sunshine, I'll show you which time is the best to head out. The full details are next.
Hello. Tonight on the latest from 7 News, civilians under attack, we reveal evidence of Russia's sickening violence in Ukraine. Plus, what will happen to the site of the Uvalde school shooting? It's a big decision by US officials. And meet the lawn legend. We speak to an Aussie gardener whose tricks of the trade are going viral. That's tonight. The latest from 7 News, right after the front bar.
Hello again. In the outlook, our wettest days are likely to be Friday and Sunday. Today there was sunshine for a brief moment mid-morning. Blink and you missed it. The rest of the day was covered with cloud. Our top out there was 15.8. You may have heard rain on the roof again overnight as this passed through. It only brought a few millimetres and cleared early morning. Then we were mostly cloudy but mostly dry after that. Top of 16 in Essendon. Melbourne's overnight showers headed through eastern Victoria. Then further showers developed in the west this afternoon. There is cloud across the north and west, and it was noticeably colder in the northeast than in Gippsland. 10 in Wangaratta and Seymour, 17 in Orbost and Bairnsdale. The northeast cloud was thick and low, and it lowered further as the afternoon went on, with rain in that drizzly fog. A weak trough brought the early wet weather, and there's another one over western Victoria, but they aren't strong or delivering very much because a large high is in control. A strong cold front is crossing the Bight. So these weak troughs continue to produce some wet weather, but it doesn't add up to much. Tomorrow, thanks to northwest winds, most of that light wet weather is on the northern slopes of the ranges. The stronger cold front affects the southwest on Thursday night. It's still strong at this stage, but so it brings a band of rain there. But you can see it break up as the front travels through and weakens on Friday. So some wet weather, but nothing heavy. Saturday is like tomorrow, light wet weather on the northern slopes of the ranges. Then another cold front set to take a similar path on Sunday. Lots of showers with this one, colder air too. But again, nothing heavy or long-lasting as there's no connection to tropical moisture while that high is in the way. Around the nation, tomorrow is sunshine for Brisbane and Sydney. Dry weather returns to Adelaide, lots of sunshine. It is showery in Perth. To Victoria, drizzly and foggy about the northern slopes of the central and eastern ranges. Fair bit of cloud, but mild thanks to northwesterly winds. The southwest, dry all day Then a band of rain arrives there at night. Closer in, there are light showers once again overnight. They clear out early morning. Tomorrow does have sunny breaks developing, but the wind picks up, so these warmer temperatures won't feel as nice as yesterday or today. The city rises to 17, but the wind becomes strong northwesterly for the afternoon and evening. Showers pre-dawn, cloud around, but much of the afternoon should have quite a bit of sunshine. On the 8-day outlook, wet for much of Friday, again on Sunday, but Saturday, pockets of sunshine in there at the top of 16. Early next week, we are dry. It clears out early Monday morning, but temperatures are down, and there is the chance of some wet weather coming in from later Tuesday onwards as a low wanders by. We're 17 tomorrow, dry after dawn, some sunshine developing, pockets in there, but the wind certainly strengthens. Mitch.
We'll take a little bit of sunshine.
We'll take that.
Whatever we can get. Thank you, Jane. And that's the way it is this Wednesday, the 22nd of June. Thanks for your company. For now, from the 7 News team, good night.